I'm very delighted to be asked to participate in this 55 Voices series in honor of Thomas Mann and to be in Thomas Mann's house in Pacific Palisades. I think that Thomas Mann is particularly relevant to the present moment in a couple of respects. I think that the role that he played as an exile from Nazi Germany, his Listen Germany lectures that were delivered into Nazi Germany during the war, in a way set an important precedent for how you dissent against tyranny, against authoritarian regimes. To me, it makes a particular difference because I am the director of something called the Center on Democracy Development and the Rule of Law at Stanford University. We run a number of programs for people who want to promote democracy around the world. Most of them are civil society activists, some are journalists, some are actually in governments that are seeking to become democratic. And I think very tragically in our period, we are facing some of the same kinds of authoritarian governments that Thomas Mann faced in his day. And a number of the people that have gone through our programs have, like him, been able to resist those regimes only from the outside and to try to speak from the outside to their own fellow citizens. I would actually like to just mention a few of them by name because they're real people and their struggles, I think, are very similar to Thomas Mann's. Nancy O'Kale had worked for the National Democratic Institute in Egypt at the time of the Arab Spring. She was jailed, eventually freed. She went to Washington to form the Tahrir Institute and spoke out against the dictatorship of General Sisi. Saeed Golkar had to flee his native Iran, and since then has been working as an academic, writing about the Iranian regime. Zhana Nemtsova was the daughter of Boris Nemtsov, the famous Russian dissident politician. She can no longer live in Russia, but has to work as a journalist from Germany. David Smolansky had been a mayor in an opposition party in Venezuela and now is in Washington. And finally, Audrey Lee, a journalist, a Chinese journalist that I think no longer finds it safe to be back in China. All of these people are following in Thomas Mann's tradition. I think that the fact that these people cannot safely travel in their own countries where they were born is an indication of the shifts in global politics that have occurred in the last few years, unfortunately. You have the consolidation of authoritarian regimes like China or Russia that are now self-confident and are trying to project their influence into the outside world. And you also have the rise of populism. You have the rise of politicians in established democracies, beginning with two of the most well-established democracies, the United States and Britain, who've used their popular mandate to try to undermine some of the democratic norms that exist in a real liberal democracy, the rule of law, the separation of powers, the independence of courts, and the importance of independent journalism as pillars of what it means to be in a real democratic society. And unfortunately, in many countries, all of these institutions, with help from outside powers like China and Russia, have been dealing a setback to global democracy. I think we are in a crisis of global democracy where the forces that support an open and tolerant society are under tremendous pressure, and we've gone backwards in that struggle. I think that the example of Thomas Mann should be an inspiration to all of those people currently struggling as he struggled back in the 1940s. I think that it's important to realize that there's hope at the end of this process, that people do not want to live under tyrannical regimes. They do want to have the freedom to think and write and act. And I think that we need to be on guard from another thing that Thomas Mann suffered from in his career, which was his dealings with the House Un-American Activities Committee and the kinds of prejudices against dissident opinions that can occur even in the most well-established democracy. And unfortunately, we are seeing some of that trend reappear in the United States, in Europe, in other countries that should be the bastions of free society. So thank you very much for your attention. I congratulate the Thomas Mann House for this event, and I look forward to further discussions along these lines. Thank you very much.